You're lucky I even let your kind walk through these doors." The words snapped through the gleaming lobby as CEO Marcus Kane glared down at the elderly janitor Samuel Jenkins hunched over his mop. To him, Samuel was just another invisible worker, frail, slow, beneath notice. But arrogance blinded him. When Marcus's hand struck Samuel's face, a delivery driver's phone caught everything. By morning, the world had seen it. Headlines blazed, investors panicked, and the deal worth $300 million vanished overnight, taking Marcus's empire with it. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun streamed through Apex Innovations, wall-to-wall windows, casting long shadows across the sleek office floor. The open workspace hummed with activity, keyboards clicking, phones chirping, and the soft murmur of professional conversation. Workers in pressed shirts and neat blouses moved between gray cubicles, their shoes clicking against the polished marble. Near the break area, Samuel Jenkins worked methodically with his mop, his movements precise after decades of practice. His blue janitor's uniform was as crisp and clean as any executive suit. Maria Gonzalez stood nearby, checking their cleaning schedule for the day. "You know what gets me, Samuel," Maria said quietly, adjusting her supervisor's badge. "How they want everything spotless but act like we're invisible." Samuel nodded, dipping his mop in the bucket. "Been that way 40 years, Maria, clean enough to see their reflection, but they look right through us." The elevator chimed its arrival, and Marcus Kane burst out of his corner office like a storm cloud. His expensive suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, his face already flushed from what everyone knew had been a difficult board call. Workers ducked their heads as he passed, not wanting to catch his eye. Samuel continued his steady mopping, creating neat, gleaming paths across the floor. Marcus's sharp footsteps approached rapidly, heading straight for the freshly mopped section. Before Samuel could call out a warning, Marcus's Italian leather shoe hit the wet surface. The CEO's foot slipped and he stumbled, catching himself, but losing his composure entirely. His face twisted with rage as he turned to Samuel. "You people can't even keep a damn floor clean." Marcus's voice carried across the suddenly quiet office. The words, "you people," hung in the air like poison. Samuel's weathered hands tightened on the mop handle, but his voice remained steady and dignified. "Sir, I keep this place clean so it can shine for people who never look down." The silence deepened. A few brave souls peeked over their cubicle walls. Near reception, Alex Rivera, a young delivery driver in his company uniform, slowly raised his phone, sensing the tension in the air. Marcus's face flushed a deeper red. His expensive watch caught the sunlight as he stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The slap came fast and hard, a crack that echoed off the glass walls. Samuel's wire-rimmed glasses flew from his face, skittering across the floor he just cleaned. A young analyst in a nearby cubicle let out an audible gasp. Other workers froze, phones forgotten in their hands. Samuel stood very still, a thin line of blood beginning to trickle from his nose. Each drop fell onto the white marble floor, a stark contrast against the pristine surface. Marcus loomed over Samuel, his chest heaving, momentarily shocked by his own action. But there was no remorse in his eyes, only continued rage and something darker. A glimpse of satisfaction at the blood he'd drawn. Maria's clipboard clattered to the floor as she rushed to Samuel's side. Her hands shook as she reached for him, her face a mixture of fury and concern. Around them, dozens of witnesses remained rooted in place, their faces showing horror, shame, and fear. Alex Rivera kept his phone steady, capturing every second. His young face was set in grim determination, even as his hands trembled slightly. Marcus's eyes darted around the office, taking in the shocked faces of his employees, his gaze locked onto Alex's phone and his upper lip curled in contempt. "Delete that footage," he snarled, "or you'll regret it." He turned on his heel, storming back toward his office, each footstep echoing like a gunshot in the dead silence. The threat hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Maria knelt beside Samuel, her voice barely above a whisper. "Samuel, I'm so sorry. We need to call someone. The police. A doctor." Samuel's eyes never left Marcus's retreating back. A lifetime of dignity and restraint showed in his posture. Even now, blood continued to drip from his nose, each drop joining the small crimson constellation forming on the floor beneath the gleaming Apex logo. "Don't delete it," Samuel whispered, his voice carrying in the silence. The words weren't just for Alex. They were for everyone watching, everyone who had seen and said nothing for too long. The office remained frozen in that moment. Sunlight continued to pour through the windows, highlighting the scene like a spotlight on a stage. Phones lay silent in their cradles. Printers hummed quietly in the background, and dozens of witnesses stood in stunned silence, watching as an old man's blood stained the pristine floor of their workplace, marking the spot where something fundamental had just shattered beyond repair. The late afternoon sun filled Samuel's modest kitchen with warm light, casting long shadows across the well-worn linoleum floor. He sat at his small round table holding an ice pack to his swollen cheek. The familiar surroundings, the faded curtains his late wife had sewn, the old coffee maker gurgling in the corner, the neatly arranged magnets on the refrigerator, seemed to mock the dignity he'd lost hours before. Maria sat beside him, her work uniform still crisp despite the day's events. Her fingers drummed nervously on the wooden table as she checked her phone for the 10th time. "Elena should be here any minute," she said softly. "I told her everything." Alex Rivera paced the small kitchen, his delivery uniform rumpled, his young face tight with anxiety. He kept glancing at his phone as if it might explode in his hand. "Mr. Jenkins, I don't know about this. Marcus Kane, he's got lawyers, connections. He'll come after me. My job." Samuel lowered the ice pack, revealing the angry red mark across his cheekbone. "Son," he said quietly, "sometimes doing nothing costs more than doing something." The screen door creaked open, and Elena Jenkins burst into the kitchen. Her business suit was slightly disheveled, her legal briefcase clutched tightly in one hand. The moment she saw her grandfather's face, she froze. "Grandpa," she whispered. Then her expression hardened. "I'm going to destroy him." Samuel reached for his granddaughter's hand. "Elena, calm down. We need to think this through." "Think what through?" Elena's voice rose as she set her briefcase down with a thud. "He assaulted you in front of witnesses. And you're sitting here with an ice pack while he's probably drinking champagne in his office." Alex stopped pacing, his phone gripped tightly. "I got it all, the whole thing. But if I post it," he swallowed hard. "My mom's sick. I need this job." Elena turned to him, her attorney's mind already working. "Show me." Alex handed over his phone, and they all watched the footage in silence. The video was crystal clear. The morning light streaming through Apex's windows. The neat rows of cubicles. The shocked faces of coworkers. Marcus Kane's rage-twisted face as he struck Samuel. The blood dropping onto the pristine marble floor. "This needs to go public," Elena said firmly. "Now," but Alex started. "Listen to me," Elena interrupted, her voice softening. "We can post it anonymously. I'll help you set up secure accounts. Apex won't be able to trace it back to you." Maria leaned forward. She's right, Alex. I've worked there 30 years. They only understand public shame. Samuel watched the discussion, his weathered hands folded on the table. When he spoke, his voice was tired but determined. All my life, I've kept my head down, worked hard, tried to set an example. He touched his swollen cheek gently. Maybe it's time for a different kind of example. Elena squeezed her grandfather's shoulder, then turned back to Alex. Let me help you set this up. We'll use VPNs, new accounts, everything untraceable. The next hour was a flurry of activity. Elena's fingers flew over Alex's phone, creating anonymous profiles, establishing digital dead ends. Maria made fresh coffee while Samuel watched silently, the ice pack melting on the table. When they finally posted the video, it felt anticlimactic. Just a soft click, then silence. But within minutes, the notifications started. Share, share, share. The numbers climbed rapidly. Hashtags appeared spontaneously. Hands off Samuel. Slap of privilege. Apex shame. The video spread across platforms like wildfire, each share accompanied by outraged comments. By early evening, local news stations were running the footage. National outlets picked it up within hours. Every replay showed the same damning scene. The powerful CEO in his dark suit striking an elderly janitor in blue, surrounded by stunned office workers, the mop trembling in Samuel's hands. Apex's PR team scrambled, releasing a statement calling the incident an unfortunate misunderstanding during a moment of workplace tension. Social media erupted with scorn. The image was too clear, too raw. The marble floors, the glass walls, the witnesses, the blood. There was no spinning this away. Maria's phone buzzed with messages from coworkers. Everyone's sharing it, she reported. Even people who never speak up. Good, Elena said firmly, watching another news segment analyze the footage. Let them see. Let everyone see. The kitchen grew darker as evening settled in, but none of them moved to turn on the lights. They sat together, watching their phones as the story grew bigger with each passing hour. Then Elena's phone rang, a contact from the city procurement office. She answered, listening intently, her expression shifting from surprise to satisfaction. They've suspended Apex's hospital contract, she announced after hanging up. $300 million frozen pending an ethics investigation. Alex slumped in relief. So, it worked. It worked. Elena confirmed, then added grimly. For now. In his glass-walled penthouse across town, Marcus Kane stood before a wall of windows, watching the city lights flicker on. Multiple screens behind him played news coverage of his violence, his face frozen in that moment of rage again and again. The crystal tumbler in his hand shook slightly as he watched his company's stock price dropping in real time. They'll pay for this, he muttered, draining his glass. All of them. Morning sunlight crept across Samuel's front lawn, illuminating the crowd of news vans and reporters that had transformed his quiet street into a media circus. Microphones bobbed like strange flowers as journalists jostled for position on his small concrete porch. Camera lights blazed through his living room windows, casting harsh shadows across his family photos. Inside, Samuel stood at his kitchen window, watching the chaos unfold. He wore a clean-pressed shirt despite his injuries, his dignity intact, even as his privacy crumbled. The bruise on his cheek had darkened overnight, a purple testament to yesterday's violence. You don't have to talk to them, Elena said from behind him, already dressed for court in a sharp navy suit. We can wait them out. Samuel shook his head slowly. Can't hide forever. Hiding is what they want. Across town, Apex's gleaming office tower hummed with nervous energy. In the open plan floor where yesterday's assault had occurred, Employees whispered behind computer screens and ducked into break rooms for hurried conversations. Security guards in dark uniforms methodically moved through the space, tearing down printed screenshots of the viral video and handmade signs demanding Marcus's resignation. The elevator dinged and conversations died mid-sentence. Marcus Kane stormed onto the floor, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, but his face tight with barely controlled rage. Behind him trailed a cluster of PR executives and legal advisors, all clutching tablets and speaking in urgent undertones. "I want every copy of that video scrubbed from our internal servers," Marcus barked, not slowing his stride. "And get me the security footage from every angle. Now." Workers kept their heads down as he passed, but their eyes followed his movement. Where Samuel's blood had stained the marble floor, a cleaning crew worked frantically to restore the shine. In a glass-walled conference room, Marcus's PR team huddled around a laptop. Their lead specialist, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s, gestured to the screen. "We've edited the security footage," she explained, her voice carefully neutral. "Watch." The doctored clip played smoothly, showing Samuel apparently lunging toward Marcus first, the mop handle rising threateningly. The actual slap appeared almost defensive in this false context. It was skillfully done, each frame manipulated to create a completely different narrative. Marcus leaned back, a cold smile playing at his lips. "Perfect. Get it out there. Internal channels first, then leak it to friendly media outlets. Make sure our people understand this is the real story." Back at Samuel's house, his ancient landline phone rang again. He reached for it automatically, but Elena intercepted the call. "Hello." Her professional tone quickly hardened. "Who is this?" "Listen here." But the line went dead. Elena slammed the receiver down, her hands shaking slightly. "Third anonymous call this morning. Just breathing and threats." Samuel sat heavily in his kitchen chair. "They want me to stay quiet." "Let them try to silence us," Elena growled, pulling out her phone. "I'm filing defamation suits against Apex and Kane personally. We'll drown them in paperwork." The doorbell rang. Maria this time slipping in through the back door to avoid the media frenzy out front. Her usually neat uniform was wrinkled, her face drawn with worry. "It's getting bad at work," she reported, accepting a cup of coffee from Samuel. "Management's going floor to floor telling everyone not to talk to reporters if they want to keep their jobs. They're showing some video saying you attacked first." "That's impossible," Elena cut in. "We have the real footage." "They're scared," Samuel said quietly. "Can't blame them. Bills to pay, families to feed." The day dragged on. Reporters eventually thinned out as bigger stories broke elsewhere. By late afternoon, Samuel insisted on doing his own grocery shopping despite Elena's protests. "Can't live in fear," he said firmly, grabbing his keys. "Need milk." The local grocery store was quiet, fluorescent lights humming overhead as Samuel pushed his cart through familiar aisles. He filled it methodically. Bread, eggs, the instant coffee he'd grown used to since his wife passed. His cheek throbbed dully under the store's harsh lighting. The parking lot was nearly empty when he emerged, pushing his loaded cart toward his old Buick. The sun had set, leaving only the dim glow of distant street lights. He was reaching for his trunk release when he heard footsteps behind him. Before he could turn, something hard struck the back of his knee. Samuel stumbled, groceries spilling across the asphalt as two masked figures emerged from the shadows. They wore dark hoodies, their faces hidden behind generic Halloween masks. "Should have kept your mouth shut, old man," one growled, landing a vicious kick to Samuel's ribs. The other attacker spat racial slurs as they continued their assault. Samuel tried to protect his head, but blows rained down from all angles. Through the pain, he heard eggs cracking, milk spilling. His mop, he always kept one in his trunk, clattered to the ground beside him. The attack felt endless, though it probably lasted less than a minute. As Samuel's vision began to blur, he saw his own blood mixing with spilled milk on the dark pavement. The last thing he heard was more slurs than running footsteps fading into the night. He collapsed beside his fallen mop, surrounded by scattered groceries, alone in the empty parking lot. Morning sunlight filtered through the Venetian blinds in Samuel's hospital room, casting striped shadows across his bruised face. The steady beep of monitors provided a quiet rhythm to match his breathing. His right eye was swollen shut, and white bandages wrapped his ribs where the kicks had left their mark. Elena sat in the hard plastic chair beside his bed, her hands clenched into fists on her lap. She hadn't slept, hadn't changed out of yesterday's suit. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but the rage burning within them was razor sharp. The door creaked open slowly, and Maria slipped in. She carried a paper cup of coffee that she wordlessly handed to Elena before pulling up another chair. "How is he?" Maria whispered, her eyes fixed on Samuel's battered face. "Stable," Elena replied through gritted teeth. "3 broken ribs, concussion, internal bruising." She took a shaky breath. "The doctor says he's lucky they didn't kill him." Maria's hands trembled as she reached for Samuel's. "I saw something last night going through security footage from the parking lot." She glanced nervously at the door before continuing in an even lower voice. "One of the attackers, when he turned, his jacket rode up. I saw an Apex security badge clipped to his belt." Elena's coffee cup crumpled in her grip, hot liquid spilling over her fingers. She didn't seem to notice the burn. "Are you sure? I'd stake my life on it." Maria nodded. "It was the new style badge, too. The ones they just started using last month." Samuel stirred slightly, his good eye fluttering open. "Elena." His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "I'm here, Grandpa." Elena leaned forward, carefully taking his hand. "You're safe now." "They wanted to send a message," Samuel said slowly. "Make an example." "Well, they made a mistake." Elena stood, straightening her wrinkled jacket. "I have a meeting at City Hall. Maria, can you stay with him?" Maria nodded, already settling in for a long watch. "Go fight them." The marble corridors of City Hall felt colder than usual as Elena's heels clicked against the polished floor. She found Daniel Brooks waiting in a quiet corner of the procurement office, nervously adjusting his tie. "Ms. Jenkins," he greeted her, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Let's walk." They moved through the building's less traveled passages, their voices low. "People in high offices want this to disappear," Daniel admitted, running a hand through his graying hair. "Apex's legal team is threatening lawsuits against anyone who publicly supports your grandfather. They're claiming defamation, business interference." "Let them," Elena snapped. "We have video evidence of their CEO assaulting an elderly man." "They're spinning it hard." Daniel stopped, turning to face her. "There are whispers circulating that your grandfather provoked the incident, that he has a history of confrontational behavior. They're painting him as unstable, dangerous even." "That's ridiculous. He's worked there for decades without a single complaint." "I know," but Daniel broke off as footsteps approached. They waited in tense silence until the sound faded. "They have money, Ms. Jenkins. Money buys influence, shapes narratives, and right now that narrative is turning against your grandfather." Elena's phone buzzed. A message from Maria. Images from the janitorial locker room at Apex. Her hands shook as she swiped through them. Racial slurs spray painted on lockers. Threatening messages scratched into metal doors. All clearly dated over several years. Look at this. She thrust the phone at Daniel. This is what they've been ignoring. This is the environment my grandfather worked in every day. Daniel studied the photos, his face growing pale. This could help, but he stopped as Alina's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email forwarded from an anonymous account. The attachment was an internal Apex memo dated 3 months ago, flagging Samuel Jenkins as a disciplinary risk due to questioning company policies and displaying argumentative tendencies. They were building their case against him, Elena realized, fury making her voice shake. They were laying the groundwork to discredit him before any of this happened. Be careful, Daniel warned, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Apex doesn't just have money. They have people everywhere, eyes everywhere. The sun had set by the time Elena returned to Samuel's house. She'd insisted on bringing him home from the hospital, setting up a makeshift bedroom in the living room so he wouldn't have to manage the stairs. Through the front window, she noticed a black sedan idling across the street, its headlights dim in the growing darkness. As she watched, the engine rumbled to life and the car pulled away smoothly, disappearing around the corner. "They're watching," she whispered, letting the curtain fall back into place. Samuel shifted in his recliner, wincing at the movement. "Let them watch," he said softly. "Let them see. We won't break." Elena moved to check his bandages, her hands gentle despite the anger still burning in her chest. The house felt smaller somehow, less safe than it had just days ago. Outside, crickets chirped in the darkness, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. But all Elena could hear was the phantom sound of that sedan's engine waiting in the shadows. Inside her corner office at Thompson & Partners, Elena spread the growing pile of evidence across her desk. Late morning sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in its rays. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, forgotten amid the mounting paperwork detailing Apex's history of discrimination. A soft knock at her door made her look up. Kareem Hassan stood in the doorway, his normally pristine suit slightly rumpled. Dark circles under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. His hands clutched a thick manila folder like a lifeline. "Ms. Jenkins." His voice quavered. "May I come in?" Elena gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Please sit down, Mr. Hassan." She studied the compliance officer's nervous demeanor as he perched on the edge of the seat. "You said you had something important to share." Kareem's fingers drummed against the folder in his lap. "What I'm about to show you," he swallowed hard. "If anyone at Apex discovers I brought this to you, my career is over. Maybe worse. I'll protect my source," Elena assured him, leaning forward. "Whatever you have, we can use it to help prevent what happened to my grandfather from happening to others." With trembling hands, Kareem placed the folder on her desk. The label read Sweep Initiative Phase 1 Implementation. Inside were dozens of reports, spreadsheets, and internal memos. Elena's eyes widened as she began reading. The documents outlined a comprehensive plan to replace Apex's janitorial staff with automated cleaning robots. But between the corporate buzzwords about modernization and efficiency, a darker purpose emerged. "Look at the demographic analysis," Kareem said softly, pointing to a color-coded chart. "They've mapped out every maintenance worker by race, age, and what they call risk factors." Elena's jaw clenched as she read. Under risk factors, they listed things like cultural resistance to authority and historical tendency toward unionization. The majority of workers marked as high risk were minorities over 50. "They're using automation as cover for systematic discrimination," she muttered, flipping through more pages. "These cost-benefit analyses aren't about efficiency at all. They're about eliminating what they view as problematic employees. Kareem nodded, his face pale. The initiative specifically targets facilities with the highest concentration of minority staff first. They disguise it with terms like demographic risk control and cultural optimization, but the intent is clear. And my grandfather, his name appears multiple times, Kareem confirmed, reaching for a specific page. They flagged him as a primary displacement candidate due to his age and what they called his non-compliant attitude toward authority structures. Alina's hands shook with fury as she read the clinical assessment of Samuel's liability factors. They'd been planning to force him out long before the assault, documenting every minor incident that could justify his termination. There's more, Kareem continued, his voice dropping even lower. Look at the funding sources for the robot procurement. The numbers don't add up unless you factor in money being diverted from the city hospital contract. They're using public funds to finance their discrimination. Elena pulled out her phone to photograph key documents. The whole initiative is built on illegal. Kareem broke off as his own phone buzzed. The color drained from his face as he read the message. What is it? Someone knows I'm here. His hands trembled so badly he nearly dropped the phone. It's from Marcus's head of security. Meeting now. Your family's safety depends on your discretion. Elena stood quickly. We need to get you protection. I have contacts in the DA's office who can know. Kareem cut her off, already backing toward the door. I have to go. They're watching my wife, my children. He paused in the doorway, eyes wild with fear. Use the evidence, but please don't reveal your source until he couldn't finish the sentence. Kareem, wait, but he was already hurrying down the hallway. Moments later, her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. If I vanish, you'll know why. Elena spent the rest of the afternoon making copies of everything, securing the evidence in multiple locations. As the sun began to set, she drove to the hospital to pick up Samuel for his final checkout. The streets were quieter than usual as they headed home, Samuel resting carefully against the passenger seat to avoid aggravating his ribs. Elena kept checking the rearview mirror, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. We're being followed, Samuel noted calmly, spotting the black SUV 3 cars back. Its headlights blazed unnecessarily bright in the dusk. I see it. Elena took a sharp right turn. The SUV followed. Steady, baby, girl, Samuel cautioned as she accelerated. Don't let them make you panic. The SUV closed the gap, its headlights now filling their back window with harsh light. Elena's heart pounded as she took another turn, then another, trying to lose their tail. They're sending another message, Samuel observed, his voice remaining level despite the tension. Letting us know they can find us whenever they want. As if to prove his point, the SUV suddenly peeled away, its tires squealing as it turned down a side street and disappeared. The abrupt absence of its headlights left them in relative darkness. Elena's hands were still shaking as she pulled into Samuel's driveway. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing what had just happened. You okay? Samuel asked softly. Or any of us? Elena responded, thinking of Kareem's terrified face, of the coded discrimination hidden in corporate documents, of the threats lurking in every shadow. The morning sun pierced through Apex's 40th floor boardroom windows, casting long shadows across the polished table. Digital displays lining the walls flashed crimson numbers. The company's stock price dropping in real time. Marcus Kane paced like a caged animal, his expensive suit wrinkled from hours of emergency meetings. 30%. He slammed his fist on the mahogany surface, making water glasses rattle. Our stock has dropped 30% because of that. His face twisted with ugly rage as he spat a racial slur. Victoria Hale, the board chair, sat ramrod straight in her leather chair, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the crisis. Her voice cut through his tirade like a steel blade. "That's exactly the kind of language that got us here, Marcus. Don't lecture me about your burning this company alive," Victoria interrupted, her tone arctic. "Every time you open your mouth, every reaction, every threat, you're pouring gasoline on the flames." Other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The youngest director, fresh from Harvard Business School, couldn't meet anyone's eyes. The CFO obsessively straightened his papers, trying to disappear. "These people," Marcus snarled. "These ungrateful." "If you finish that sentence," Victoria warned, "I'll call an emergency vote to remove you right now." She gestured at the screens. "Look at those numbers. Really look. That's not just bad PR. That's shareholder value evaporating because you couldn't control yourself." Across town, in the fluorescent-lit maze of Thompson and Partners law offices, Elena Jenkins hunched over her keyboard. Her cubicle walls were plastered with printouts, security footage stills, employee testimonies, financial records. She'd been building the civil case since dawn, fueled by coffee and righteous anger. "Miss Jenkins," her assistant appeared at the cubicle entrance. "Detective Lopez is online, too. Says it's about Maria Gonzalez's statement." Elena grabbed her phone. "Detective. Yes, I'm here with her now." She turned to where Maria sat in a chair beside her desk, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Maria leaned forward toward the speaker phone, her voice steady despite her obvious tension. "Like I told you before, the man who attacked Samuel, the shorter one, his security badge was visible when he swung. Blue stripe on white plastic, Apex logo clear as day. Could you identify him in a lineup?" The detective asked. "No." Maria's fingers twisted together. "He wore a mask. But I know that badge. I've worked there 15 years. The blue stripe means executive protection detail. They guard the C-suite offices." Elena typed rapidly, documenting every detail that connects the assault directly to Apex security team. She said, "We need warrant to access their badge records for that night." "Working on it," Lopez replied. "But their legal team is fighting us. On every." A commotion in the office hallway cut him off. Elena looked up to see several of her colleagues clustered around a computer screen, faces grave. "I'll call you back," she told Lopez, hurrying over. "What's happening?" Her colleague wordlessly turned his monitor. A breaking news site displayed a leaked medical document. What appeared to be a psychiatric evaluation of Samuel Jenkins. Elena's blood ran cold as she scanned the text. History of paranoid delusions. Workplace persecution complex. Violent outbursts during Vietnam service. The medical letterhead looked official. Every word was carefully crafted. Character assassination. Within hours, news channels picked up the story. Talking heads debated Samuel's mental state. Social media posts questioned if he had snapped and attacked Marcus first. The carefully manufactured sympathy shift made Elena physically ill. She drove to Samuel's house as soon as she saw the reports, finding him sitting in his small living room. The TV was on, muted, showing yet another panel discussion about his troubled history. "Daddy." Elena hadn't called him that since she was little. "We need to." Her voice trailed off as she saw his shoulders shaking. Samuel Jenkins, who had survived war, poverty, and decades of discrimination without breaking, was crying silently in his armchair. "They made it all up," he whispered. "Every word. But people will believe it because it's what they want to believe about men like me." Elena knelt beside him, taking the printed psychiatric report from his trembling hands. With deliberate movements, she tore it cleanly in half. Then in quarters. Let them spin their lies, she said, her voice hard with determination. We have truth. We have evidence. We have witnesses. Samuel wiped his eyes. I'm tired, baby girl. So tired of fighting. I know. Elena gripped his hand tightly. They want us scared. They want us to give up. She met his gaze, seeing decades of pain, but also unbreakable dignity. Let's make them scared instead. Samuel looked at their clasped hands, his weathered and calloused from years of labor, hers smooth but strong from carrying briefcases instead of mops. A hint of his old strength crept back into his posture. Your grandmother used to say, truth rises like cream, he murmured. No matter how much dirt they stir up, it always rises. Elena squeezed his hand, thinking of Karim's documents, of Maria's testimony, of the security footage yet to be uncovered. The pieces were there. They just had to be brave enough to assemble them. The afternoon sun beat down on the Chevron station's cracked pavement. Heat waves rippled off the empty pumps, creating mirages that matched Karim Hassan's jittery nerves. He sat in his silver Accord, engine idling for a quick escape, watching every vehicle that passed with growing anxiety. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. 2 minutes away. Karim's hands trembled as he adjusted his rearview mirror for the 100th time. The parking lot remained empty except for a weathered pickup truck whose driver was inside paying for gas. Still, his heart jumped at every passing car, every distant siren. When Elena's blue Honda pulled in beside him, Karim almost cried with relief. She parked close, driver's side to driver's side, so they could talk through their windows. Did anyone follow you? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Elena shook her head. I took 3 different routes. Checked my mirrors the whole way. We're clear. Karim's fingers clenched around a small object in his pocket. The flash drive felt impossibly heavy for something so tiny. 2 years of secret recordings, emails, and financial records. Evidence that could destroy careers and maybe get him killed. I can't sleep anymore, he confessed. Dark circles evident under his eyes. Every noise, every shadow. I keep thinking they know. We can protect you, Elena assured him. My firm has connections with no. Karim pulled out the flash drive. Its metal casing caught the sunlight. I'm leaving town tonight, going somewhere they can't find me. He pressed the drive into her hand. This has everything. The bribes to city officials, the racial profiling algorithms in HR, the safety violations they covered up. Everything. Elena stared at the small device. Karim, come with me now. We can. My family's already gone. Sent them ahead this morning. His smile was bitter. Told my kids we're taking a surprise vacation. Better they think that than know their father might. He stopped himself. Just make it count. Okay, I will, Elena promised. But please let me help. Someone's coming. Karim's eyes widened at an approaching black SUV. Go now. Elena pulled away, watching in her mirror as Karim's Accord sped off in the opposite direction. The SUV drove past without stopping. But the fear in Karim's eyes haunted her all the way back to the office. Hours later, her phone rang. Detective Lopez's voice was grim. A silver Accord was just found in the Riverside Canal, he said without preamble. License plate matches your whistleblower. Elena's stomach lurched. Karim is he. No body recovered yet. Divers are searching. Driver's side door was open. Signs of impact damage on the guardrail. Lopez paused. Ms. Jenkins. The brake lines were cut. She sank into her chair, the flash drive suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 lb. It wasn't an accident. No, Lopez agreed. It wasn't. Elena worked through the night, analyzing the drive's contents. Each file revealed new layers of corruption. The morning light was just breaking when she found it. A series of emails between Marcus Kane and city procurement officials dated exactly 1 week before Apex won their $300 million contract. Wire transfers, offshore accounts, golf club memberships gifted to family members. The paper trail was meticulous, preserved by Kareem's careful documentation. She thought of him checking these records late at night, alone in his office, knowing what would happen if he was caught. Her eyes burned with exhaustion and unshed tears as she compiled the evidence. Around 8 a.m., Samuel arrived, moving slowly with his cane. He'd insisted on coming to the office despite her protests that he should rest. "You look tired, baby girl," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Kareem's dead." The words came out raw. "They killed him for this." She gestured at her screen, showing the evidence of Apex's corruption. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, studying the amounts listed in the bribes. Finally, he spoke softly. "He died for truth. He had kids," Elena whispered. "A family, and he chose to stand up anyway." Samuel reached across the desk, covering her hand with his, because he knew some things matter more than fear. Elena looked at their joined hands, then at the damning evidence filling her screen. "He trusted me to make this count." "Then, let's make it count," Samuel said firmly. His voice carried the weight of decades fighting similar battles, of countless small dignities denied, of all the times he'd been forced to swallow his pride and keep mopping floors. For Kareem, for every person they thought they could silence, Elena straightened in her chair, drawing strength from her grandfather's quiet determination. She thought of Kareem's trembling hands passing her the flash drive, of his last gift to justice. On her screen, the evidence waited, a digital testament to one man's courage and the truth he died protecting. She opened her email and began composing a message to Detective Lopez, copying her most trusted reporters. Samuel watched in approval as her fingers flew across the keyboard, turning Kareem's sacrifice into armor for their fight. The midday sun glared off Apex's glass tower, casting harsh reflections onto the crowd below. Hundreds of protesters packed the plaza, their signs bobbing like angry waves. "Justice for Samuel, Black Lives Matter, Apex, Bigot Path." The chants echoed between buildings, growing louder with each repetition. "No justice, no peace. Hands off Samuel. Fire Marcus Kane." Inside the tower's third floor, Maria watched through the windows, her heart swelling at the sight of so many people standing up for Samuel. Around her, employees clustered near the glass, some recording with phones, others whispering nervously. "Look at all of them," whispered Lisa from accounting, her eyes wide. "I've never seen anything like this." Maria nodded, noticing how the protest stretched around the block. Students, church groups, union workers, and ordinary citizens had joined forces. Some carried mops in solidarity. Others wore blue jumpsuits like Samuel's. The peaceful crowd's energy felt electric, hopeful. 20 floors above, Marcus Kane stood in his corner office, jaw clenched as he watched the demonstration. His fixer lounged in a leather chair, speaking quietly into a phone. "They're in position," the fixer reported, hanging up. "Just say when." Marcus's lips curved into a cold smile. "Do it." Down in the crowd, the change happened so fast many didn't notice at first. Men in hoodies appeared at the edges, faces masked. They moved through the protesters like sharks through water. The first rock shattered a ground floor window. The crash drawing gasps and shouts. "No, stop." A protest organizer tried to grab one of the masked men. "We're peaceful." But more rocks flew. More windows broke. The agitators pushed and shoved, creating pockets of chaos that news cameras eagerly focused on. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Maria pressed closer to the glass, watching in horror as the peaceful demonstration descended into mayhem. "This isn't right," she muttered. "This isn't our people." Security guards poured out of the building's lobby, wearing riot gear and carrying batons. They formed a line, advancing on the crowd. Protesters began to retreat, hands raised. Then it happened. A black SUV with Apex's logo gunned its engine, tires squealing as it accelerated toward the crowd. People screamed and scattered, but one young woman holding a "Justice for Samuel" sign couldn't move fast enough. The impact threw her 10 feet. Her body hit the pavement as phones recorded from every angle. The SUV never slowed down. "Oh God!" Lisa covered her mouth, tears streaming. Other employees backed away from the windows, faces pale. Maria couldn't look away. She'd seen the driver's face through the windshield, one of Marcus's personal security team. This was planned. This was deliberate. Paramedics arrived within minutes. News helicopters circled overhead like vultures. Every channel switched to live coverage, but they focused on the broken windows, the scattered rocks, the violent uprising that had turned tragic. Hours later, as the sun set behind the city skyline, Maria finally left work. Her hands shook as she unlocked her car, remembering the young woman's body flying through the air. The image wouldn't leave her mind. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every shadow made her jump. Every car behind her seemed threatening. When she pulled into her driveway, the motion sensor light didn't come on. "Perfect," she muttered, fumbling with her keys in the darkness. "Just what I need." She reached her front door and froze. Something dark was smeared across the white paint. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she clicked on her phone's flashlight. Blood fresh and red, dripping down her door in ugly streaks and pinned in the center, a note written in the same crimson fluid. "You're next." Maria stumbled backward, phone nearly slipping from her trembling fingers. She managed to take a photo before calling Elena, her voice cracking. "They were at my house. They left. They left blood." "Don't touch anything," Elena ordered. "I'm calling Detective Lopez. Go to your neighbor's house right now. Don't stay there alone." Maria glanced at the dark windows of her home, wondering if someone was already inside, waiting. The blood gleamed wetly in her phone's light. Her sanctuary had become a threat, marked by the same violence that had taken Kareem, that had beaten Samuel, that had run down an innocent protester. She backed away from her door, hurrying next door to Mrs. Chen's house. The elderly woman took one look at Maria's face and pulled her inside, locking the door behind them. Through Mrs. Chen's window, Maria watched police cars arrive, their red and blue lights painting the neighborhood in alternating colors. Officers photographed the door, took samples, dusted for prints, but she knew they wouldn't find anything. Marcus's people were too careful, too professional. Detective Lopez interviewed her in Mrs. Chen's kitchen, his face grim as she described the day's events. "First, Kareem, now this," he said, shaking his head. "They're escalating. They want us scared," Maria replied, hands wrapped around a cooling cup of tea. "They want us to back down." Lopez studied her. "Will you?" Maria thought of Samuel's dignity, of Kareem's sacrifice, of the young woman lying broken on the pavement. The blood on her door was meant to terrify her into silence. Instead, it made her angry. "No," she said firmly. "I won't." The morning after Maria's door was vandalized, Elena pulled into her law firm's parking garage. Her heels clicked against concrete as she walked toward her silver Audi, mind racing with strategy for the day's depositions. The sound echoed off concrete pillars in the nearly empty structure. Something felt wrong. The air smelled different. She was still 20 feet from her car when she noticed it. A small puddle beneath the vehicle. Her steps slowed. The chemical smell grew stronger. Then she saw the wire. Oh God! Elena backpedaled, turning to run. She'd made it 3 steps when the explosion hit. The blast knocked her forward onto the pavement. Heat washed over her back as her car erupted into a fireball. Glass and metal rained down, pinging off parked vehicles. Black smoke billowed through the garage, setting off fire alarms that wailed through the building. Elena pushed herself up, ears ringing. Her palms were scraped raw from the fall. Smoke stung her eyes and throat as she stumbled toward the exit, coughing. Other cars' alarms blared in cacophony. Through the haze, she saw people running down from upper levels, shouting about calling 911, but Elena couldn't focus on their words. All she could feel was rage. Pure white-hot fury that made her hands shake. They'd tried to kill her, just like they'd killed Kareem. Just like they'd threatened Maria. Just like they'd beaten Samuel. By the time firefighters arrived, Elena was sitting on a concrete barrier outside, refusing medical attention despite the soot on her face and clothes. Detective Lopez knelt beside her, notepad ready. Same signature as the other attacks, he said quietly. Professional job. They wanted to send a message. Message received, Elena growled. And here's my response. I'm going to bury them. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel Brooks. Check your email now. With trembling fingers, Elena opened her inbox. Daniel had sent dozens of documents, procurement records, inspection reports, internal memos, all showing how Apex had systematically falsified safety data to win city contracts. Jesus, she whispered, scrolling through. Equipment maintenance logs were forged. Required inspections never happened. 3 hospital patients had died when Apex's faulty monitoring systems failed. She forwarded everything to her media contacts, adding a simple message. They tried to kill me this morning. Here's why. Within hours, the story exploded. News channels cut from footage of her burning car to damning evidence of Apex's negligence. The company's stock price plummeted. Justice for Samuel trended again alongside Apex kills. That afternoon, Samuel agreed to an interview with Channel 7's most respected anchor. They set up in his living room, Samuel in his favorite armchair, looking dignified despite his lingering bruises. Mr. Jenkins, the anchor began, how do you respond to Apex's claims that you provoked the incident? Samuel's voice was steady. I've spent 50 years cleaning floors, ma'am, 50 years being invisible to men like Marcus Kane, until I wasn't invisible enough. He paused, dabbing sweat from his forehead. They want to paint me as angry, violent. But I'm just tired. Tired of his words slurred. His hand dropped. Then Samuel slumped forward in his chair. Grandpa. Elena rushed to him from where she'd been watching off camera. The anchor called for help as the camera crew scrambled. Hours later, Samuel lay in a hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily. The doctor said it was exhaustion combined with stress. But he'd be okay with rest. Elena held his weathered hand, noting how fragile it felt. I'm sorry, Samuel whispered. Should have been stronger. Don't you dare apologize. Elena's voice cracked. You're the strongest person I know. Samuel's grip tightened slightly. They think they can bury this. Like they bury everything. His eyes, though tired, burned with determination. Don't let them, baby girl. Make them choke on it. Across town in Apex's basement storage room, Marcus's fixer fed documents into an industrial shredder. The machine growled as it devoured page after page labeled camera loop authorization. Evidence of the CEO ordering security footage to be altered, proving premeditation in Samuel's assault. The fixer's phone buzzed, Marcus demanding confirmation that everything was destroyed. But as he reached for another stack of papers, he didn't notice the janitor watching through a crack in the door, recording every moment. The shredder worked endlessly, turning damning evidence into confetti. Up in his penthouse office, Marcus paced, waiting for confirmation. The city was turning against him. His own board was asking uncomfortable questions. And somewhere out there, that old janitor and his crusading granddaughter were still fighting. He grabbed his phone, barking at his fixer. "Is it done?" "Almost. Just finishing the last batch. Burn the shreds. I want nothing left." But it was too late. The truth was already spreading, flowing through the city like smoke, impossible to contain. Just like the smoke that still lingered in the parking garage where they tried to silence Elena. Just like the smoke that rose from Kareem's submerged car. Just like the acrid smell of burning rubber when they'd run down that protester. The fire they'd started was growing beyond their control, and soon it would consume them all. Samuel sat in his worn armchair, morning sunlight streaming through the window. His broken glasses lay on the side table, the cracked lens catching the light. The attack in the parking lot had left them twisted, but he couldn't bring himself to throw them away. Like everything else in his life, they held memories, both good and painful. Elena paced the small living room, still fuming about her destroyed car. Her suit was wrinkled from a sleepless night spent reviewing Daniel's leaked documents. "There has to be more," she muttered. "Something we missed." Samuel stared at his glasses, watching the light dance through the spider-webbed cracks. Something tugged at his memory. A detail from his years of maintenance work. Something about cameras and backup systems. His eyes widened. "The janitor's closet camera," he said suddenly. Elena stopped pacing. "What?" "The security camera outside the janitor's closet. It shares a backup feed with the maintenance facility across town." Samuel leaned forward, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. Apex installed redundant systems years ago after a fire wiped out their main servers. Every camera has an off-site backup. Elena rushed to kneel beside his chair. "Are you sure? The footage from that night could still exist." "If they didn't know about the backup, yes." Samuel's hands trembled slightly. The system was old, forgotten. Only us maintenance workers knew about it. Elena pulled out her phone, fingers flying over the keys as she texted Daniel. Within minutes, he called back. "The old maintenance facility on Industrial Drive," Daniel confirmed. "It's been closed since the automation upgrade, but the servers should still be there. I can get you in. I have master access codes from my procurement work." "When?" Elena demanded. "Tonight. Security's minimal since the closure, but we have to hurry. They're scheduled to clear out the building next week." As darkness fell, Elena parked her rental car behind the abandoned maintenance facility. The concrete building loomed silent and dark, its windows dusty with disuse. Daniel waited by a side door, nervously checking his phone. "Security patrol passes every hour," he whispered. "We have 40 minutes until the next round." Elena nodded, pulling on black gloves. "Show me." Daniel punched in a code and the door clicked open. They slipped inside, flashlight beams cutting through years of dust. Their footsteps echoed in the empty corridors as Daniel led them to the server room. The space was cramped, filled with humming equipment. Despite the building's closure, the backup systems still ran, too critical to simply shut down. Daniel moved to a terminal, fingers dancing across the keyboard. "Accessing archival footage," he murmured. Date of the incident. The screen flickered, showing multiple camera feeds. Elena leaned close, watching as Daniel navigated through folders of stored video. "There." She pointed to a file marked with the date of the assault. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. The camera's view showed the hallway outside the janitor's closet, partially capturing the lobby where the assault occurred. But more importantly, it showed what happened before. Marcus appeared on screen, checking his watch. A security guard approached and their conversation was captured by the camera's microphone. "Loop the lobby footage for the next hour," Marcus ordered. "I'm going to teach that old man some respect." "Sir, I don't think just do it and make sure the main system records show him attacking me first." Alina's hands clenched into fists as they watched. The footage continued showing Marcus deliberately walking towards Samuel's cleaning area. The slap, the blood, everything captured from this forgotten angle. "Download it," Elena commanded. "Multiple copies." Daniel worked quickly, transferring the files to secure drives. Outside, a light swept past the windows. The security patrol arriving early. "We need to move," Daniel hissed. They hurried through dark corridors, hearts pounding. The guards' footsteps echoed somewhere nearby. Elena clutched the precious drives to her chest as they slipped out the side door, quietly pulling it shut. They made it to Elena's car just as flashlight beams swung around the corner. Crouching low, they waited until the guard passed before starting the engine and driving away. Miles later, in the safety of Elena's office, they reviewed the footage again. Every damning second was preserved. Proof of premeditation, of Marcus ordering evidence destroyed, of the entire cover-up. "This changes everything," Daniel said quietly. "There's no spinning this away." Elena connected one of the drives to her computer. Her hands were steady now, anger replaced by cold determination. She began uploading copies to secure servers, to trusted journalists, to government investigators. "What about Samuel?" Daniel asked. "Should we show him first?" Elena shook her head. "No time. If we wait, they might find a way to stop us." She hit the final upload button. "Let's end this." Across the city, phones began buzzing with notifications. News alerts flashed. Social media exploded with the new footage. The video spread like wildfire, destroying every lie Apex had crafted. In his hospital bed, Samuel watched on his tablet as truth finally emerged. His weathered face showed no triumph, no celebration, only quiet vindication as justice began its work. The sun was rising again, painting the city in gold. But this dawn was different. This dawn carried truth on its rays, illuminating every shadow where corruption had hidden. And in its light, no amount of money or power could hide what had really happened on that marble floor. Morning light filtered through Apex's towering windows, casting long shadows across the transformed office floor. Where cubicles had once created a maze of workspace, now stood rows of elegant chairs facing a small stage draped in corporate blue. The marble floor gleamed beneath, freshly polished to erase any trace of what had happened there weeks ago. Marcus Kane stood at the podium, adjusting his gold cuff links as he practiced his speech. His reflection in the glass showed a man desperately clinging to control, his face lined with tension despite expert makeup. "And as we move forward, Apex remains committed to workplace dignity and respect," he rehearsed, voice echoing in the empty space. "Recent events have been misconstrued by those seeking to damage our reputation." Behind him, event staff arranged flower arrangements and adjusted lighting. Security personnel in dark suits stationed themselves at strategic points, their earpieces glinting. The fixer stood in a corner, speaking quietly into his phone. Across town, Elena's office buzzed with controlled chaos. Journalists huddled around her conference table, reviewing copies of the backup footage on tablets. Their faces showed a mix of shock and eagerness as they watched Marcus's premeditated actions unfold. "The stream is ready," her tech expert confirmed, showing her the setup. One click and it broadcasts to every screen in that room, plus major news networks. Elena nodded, checking her phone again. No response from Maria. The janitorial supervisor always answered texts, especially since the threats began. Something felt wrong. Has anyone heard from Maria today? She asked the room. Heads shook. Elena dialed Maria's number, tension building in her shoulders. The phone rang once, twice, then connected. But instead of Maria's warm voice, Elena heard muffled sounds, thumping, a choked cry. Maria. Elena's voice sharpened with alarm. Maria, are you there? More sounds, fabric against a microphone, what might have been tape being ripped, then clear, terrified screaming before the line went dead. Elena's hands shook as she lowered the phone. The room had gone silent, everyone staring at her. She could still hear Maria's scream echoing in her head. Track her phone, she ordered the tech expert. Now, as he worked, Elena paced, her heels clicking against the floor. The timing wasn't coincidental. Hours before the gala, before their evidence would expose everything, they had taken Maria. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Maria bound to a chair in what looked like a storage room, fear clear in her eyes despite the poor lighting. A message followed. Back off or she dies. Elena's jaw clenched. She thought of Samuel in his hospital bed, of Kareem's car in the river, of every person Apex had hurt or silenced. Not this time. Not Maria. Keep working on the location, she told her team. And get me everything you can on Apex's properties, especially storage facilities or unused spaces. She brought up the building plans they'd acquired during the investigation. The main office had sub-basement, maintenance areas, old storage rooms from before the renovations, places where screams wouldn't carry. The tech expert looked up. Her phone's last signal came from near Apex Tower. It's off now, but they're keeping her close, Elena finished. Where they can control the situation. During the gala, she studied the blueprints more carefully. The sub-basement level showed a series of old maintenance rooms now supposedly unused. Perfect for hiding someone. Change of plans, she announced. I'm going to the gala early. Have the stream ready, but don't activate until I give the signal. What about Maria? Someone asked. Elena grabbed her briefcase, checking that the backup drives were secure inside. I'm getting her out first. Then we're going to make Marcus Kane choke on every lie he's ever told. She chose her outfit carefully, a conservative black suit that would let her blend in with other executives, heels she could run in if needed. Under her jacket, she clipped a small recorder. Back at Apex, the gala preparations continued. Staff hung banners proclaiming building tomorrow together, while caterers set up elegant refreshment tables. The fixer directed security personnel with hand signals, positioning them near every exit. Marcus stood at the window of his corner office, watching the city below. He'd changed into a fresh suit, dark blue with subtle pinstripes. Every detail of his appearance was calculated to project strength and control. The guest list is confirmed, his assistant reported. Press has been screened. Security is ready. Marcus nodded, adjusting his tie. And our problem contained, the fixer answered from the doorway. She won't interfere. Good. Marcus turned from the window, practiced smile in place. Let's give them a show they won't forget. In the sub-basement, Maria twisted against her bonds, tape across her mouth muffling her protests. A single guard watched her, looking bored. Above she could hear the sounds of chairs being arranged, of people preparing for the gala where Marcus would lie again. She thought of Samuel, of his dignity, even as blood dripped from his nose. She thought of all the years she'd worked here, watching corruption hide behind polish and pretense. Her eyes burned with tears of rage. But she kept struggling. Someone would come. Justice would find its way into even these dark corners. The guard checked his phone, muttering about missing the party upstairs. Maria kept working at the ropes, ignoring the pain as they cut into her wrists. She just needed time, and upstairs she knew Elena was coming. The afternoon sun streamed through Apex's glass walls, casting long shadows across the transformed office space. Well-dressed shareholders and reporters filled the rows of chairs where cubicles had once stood. The air hummed with anticipation and the soft murmur of conversation. Security personnel lined the walls, their dark suits and earpieces making them look like identical sentries. Near the refreshment table, marketing staff distributed glossy folders showcasing Apex's commitment to workplace dignity. Elena slipped through the crowd, her black suit helping her blend with the other executives. Her heart raced knowing Maria was somewhere below in the building's dark sub-levels. But timing was crucial. She had to let Marcus begin his performance before bringing down the curtain. The lights dimmed slightly, drawing attention to the small stage. Victoria Hale, the board chair, approached the podium first. Her silver hair gleamed as she introduced Marcus Kane, describing him as a leader committed to positive change. Marcus strode onto the stage, his blue pinstriped suit immaculate. He gripped the podium with manic energy, flashing his practiced smile at the crowd. The same hands that had struck Samuel weeks ago, now gesturing smoothly as he began to speak. Distinguished shareholders, members of the press, he began, voice steady and controlled. Recent weeks have brought challenges to Apex. Misunderstandings have been weaponized by those seeking to damage our reputation. In the back of the room, Elena's tech expert confirmed through her earpiece that the stream was ready. She watched Marcus's performance, noting how his confident facade masked the desperation in his eyes. But Apex remains committed to excellence. Marcus continued, warming to his theme, to dignity in the workplace, to treating every employee with the respect they deserve. A soft click echoed through the sound system. The massive screens behind Marcus, meant to display corporate logos, suddenly flickered to life. Crystal clear footage filled the displays, showing this very room weeks ago when it still held cubicles. The audience gasped as they watched Marcus storm across the freshly mopped floor. Samuel's blue jumpsuit was vivid in the footage, his dignified posture a stark contrast to Marcus's rage. The sound of the slap cracked through the speakers, followed by the thud of Samuel's glasses hitting marble. Marcus spun around, his rehearsed smile shattering as he saw himself exposed on the screens. The footage continued, showing him ordering the camera loop, revealing the calculated nature of his violence. "Turn it off," he shouted, but the tech crew couldn't override Elena's stream. The footage played again, an endless loop of truth destroying his carefully constructed lies. Reporters, cameras flashed, shareholders whispered in shock. The security team looked uncertain, glancing between Marcus and their earpieces for instructions. Elena stepped forward, her voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "This is the real Apex culture, ladies and gentlemen. Violence, racism, and corruption, all hidden behind marble and glass." Marcus lunged from the stage, his face contorted with fury. He reached Elena in 3 long strides, his fist connecting with her jaw before anyone could react. She stumbled, but didn't fall. Tasting blood, the crowd scattered, creating space around the confrontation. Security finally moved forward, but Marcus was already charging toward the exit near the janitor's closet. He didn't see Samuel until it was too late. The elderly janitor stood in his path, leaning on a mop handle, but straight-backed and resolute. His recent hospital stay had left him thinner, but his eyes blazed with quiet strength. "Moving kind of fast there, Mr. Kane," Samuel said softly. "Floor might be slippery." Marcus's hand disappeared into his jacket, emerging with a switchblade. The blade snapped open with a click that echoed in the sudden silence. "Get out of my way, old man," he snarled. Samuel's response was to swing the mop handle in a smooth arc. Decades of military training flowing through his aged muscles. The aluminum shaft knocked the knife from Marcus's grip, sending it skittering across the floor. Marcus howled in rage and charged. Samuel pivoted, using the mop handle like a staff to deflect the attack. The CEO's momentum carried him past straight into a desk divider. The impact shook the partition, but didn't stop him. He spun back, murder in his eyes, but his expensive leather shoes found a puddle of spilled cleaning fluid. His feet went out from under him, arms windmilling as he tried to catch himself. The impact when he hit the marble floor echoed through the office. The crack of bone breaking was followed by Marcus's scream. He clutched his twisted arm curled on the same floor where he'd assaulted Samuel weeks ago. Police burst through the stairwell doors, weapons drawn. Behind them came Daniel Brooks, supporting a limping but very much alive Maria. Her wrists showed rope marks, but her eyes shone with triumph as she watched Marcus writhing on the floor. "They had her in the old storage room," Daniel explained to Elena. "Once we found the security badge logs, it was just a matter of timing." Cameras flashed as officers cuffed Marcus, careful of his broken arm. The CEO's tears and mucus.